Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani and welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships. And let's talk about the insight of narcissistic people, and specifically, how is it that narcissistic people can be so insightful about other people, but not about themselves? So this disconnect around insight, this is a disconnect that can throw many people who are in all kinds of narcissistic relationships off. So let's take a minute to break it down before you blame yourself for not reading the relationship correctly and then blaming yourself more, because after all, you might be thinking, oh, they can't be narcissistic, they're too insightful. Narcissistic people are actually very socially perceptive. They have to be. To be able to consistently get narcissistic supply, in a way you do have to be able to read the room and figure out the status of folks in the room and behave in a manner that will get you validation. Now, there's a skill in that. It's not coming from a place of empathy, which lots of people might think that they have, because we assume that people who are insightful, especially about other people, are empathic. It's not. They simply have, narcissistic people have insight about other people. This social perceptiveness and the ability to understand other people is why grandiose narcissistic people in particular are such good salespeople. They can read weaknesses, people's agendas. But since a salesperson has only one goal, which is to close the sale with little regard for whether or not it's good for you, that isn't empathy. That is a uniquely honed transactional ability to read another person. And I can say something here as a shrink. Psychologists can be quite analytic about other people. We have the luxury of an objective view from the outside. As an outsider, especially if you are analytic and you're a student of human nature, you're able to put together a far more objective view on a person's motivations, neuroses, histories, and knit them all together. Again, this does not require empathy. It requires a person who can think about other people, almost think about other people like they're a problem to solve or a situation to analyze. And I got to tell you, this can be uniquely galling if the narcissistic person is able to point out toxic patterns that they themselves engage in, like betrayal or lying or manipulation. And when they do that, you may look at them like they have three heads because they're reading it in someone else, but not themselves. And you may have even tried that twist of saying, hey, you do that too. My guess is at that point you were gaslighted into oblivion. Narcissistic people know what does and what does not constitute socially acceptable behavior. And frankly, if they were played by another narcissistic person or taken advantage of by another narcissistic person, they are acutely aware of these patterns and can be quite insightful about them. And it's as though someone was able to successfully help someone with their homework, but not be able to pass the test with themselves. That's what it is with narcissistic folks. And this insight that narcissistic people have about other people also extends to other people who may not be narcissistic, but who may be going through something. And this is where we may see the cognitive empathy kick in. The narcissistic person may understand and be quite insightful, for example, about someone's sadness or their despair or their struggle, but not really have any felt empathy for them. Narcissistic people may get it, but they don't feel it. Being analytic or being able to cognitively dissect someone's psychological experience does not mean that a person has self-reflective capacity. And that is the paradox of the narcissistic person. The defensive structure of narcissism that is designed to protect their vulnerable inner core, their insecurity, their shame that's always sort of threatening to pop out, means that the insight is not going to get deep in there for a narcissistic person. But that same vulnerability doesn't play a role in their capacity to be insightful about other people's emotions. You may now be wondering, well, why aren't they insightful about me? Well, Sometimes they may be. You may even be surprised by a zinger or two that the narcissistic person sends your way. But the longer you know them, and the more interdependent your relationship with them, the more you become a potential threat, a potential source of shame, an extension of them. And the more that happens, the more you are experienced as an extension of them, the less their insightfulness about you that they may be able to apply to other people. Your experiences, when you get that close to them, become their experiences. Your mistakes are affronts to them. And then the damned insight goes out the window. But with people who are more removed from them, narcissistic people can be quite insightful. This is why some of you who work with narcissistic people will sometimes be struck by them sort of getting it. That is why some of you who have a brother-in-law you see only sporadically, but is a raging narcissist, again, he may seem a little insightful about something you are talking about. But that insight is always towards other people, but it's not towards themselves or people who are close to them. It's interesting because there are many other personality patterns, mental health issues, and neurodivergent patterns in which this capacity to clearly see and witness the experience of another person and have insight about them is lacking. And this is another reason why this pattern of insight from the narcissistic person can be so surprising. The narcissistic person's insight about other people is sort of paradoxically improved by their lack of empathy. They're able to be almost surgically analytic, something that can get muddied up when we care about someone. And this also relates to a question I recently got from a group of therapists, where one of the therapists asked me about the existence of narcissistic therapists. And I said, yes, that is a thing. And because that kind of therapist may have a strong analytic capacity about other people, while they may not be the most empathic therapists, they may still be able to get in there and put together your puzzle pieces. It still may feel like a somewhat empty experience, though. In so many ways, this personality style, narcissism, is vexing for other people because it's so damned confusing. But this is an interesting puzzle that people have encountered. And let me tell you this, it is real. So hoping that gives you some clarity, so ultimately you doubt yourself a little less. Thanks again.